Hey, let's have a little fun with this video, huh? Hey, welcome to another video. I know you're not supposed to date these videos. I get it. But we're coming towards the end of the year. It's a holiday season. And I thought I would dress up, for my with my Jerry Garcia Christmas tie and just look all Christmassy. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, sometimes it's not sometimes. A lot of times it's hard to come up with content that's not been repeated a million times over on YouTube as a photographer. And since I don't live in the Lake District or someplace where you can go out and find something new to photograph almost every day, you have to rely on talking about a particular subject. And in this one, I thought I'd do a little, maybe tongue-in-cheek. I read a forum called Ugly Hedgehogs, and sometimes people on there can get a little crazy with each other, a little bitter, and it's not nice. I tend to stay out of it. I try to be a drama-free zone. A couple of years ago, I got myself hooked up in one of the discussions, and people, they just get crazy. You think Canon versus Nikon or Sony versus Nikon autofocus discussions get a little crazy. Sometimes they just, I don't know. So someone posted one this morning about the myths of mirrorless cameras. And I thought I would, and I think he did it a little tongue-in-cheek. I think he did. I could be wrong. And he's just being attacked by all these people that, what are you talking about? I don't know that I'm defending him in this video, but I think I'd at least like to go over some of the things that he brought up that are quite obvious. And if you are someone who hasn't switched to a mirrorless camera yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. No. Tongue-in-cheek, kidding. But I thought I would actually go over some of these things that he posted, not me, that he posted, and maybe it might help you decide if you want to go from a non-mirrorless camera to a mirrorless camera. And even though it's tongue-in-cheek, we can, maybe you'll get some information that might help you out of this video. So let me pull it up. First thing he says is, when you remove the mirror, full-frame mirrorless bodies are feather light and size of toys. Well, obviously that's not true, okay? That has to be tongue-in-cheek. My Z8 is probably heavier than the old D750 that I had. I'm not sure about the D700, but it's probably lighter than the D750 is probably lighter than my Z8. Might not be lighter than my Z7II, but it really depends on the camera body. And I think most people know that. Lenses for mirrorless bodies are cheaper and don't even have measurable weight. Again, tongue-in-cheek. Most of them aren't cheaper. They're probably, in a lot of ways, the good ones are probably more expensive or as expensive. And I'm going to just use Nikon, for example. I don't know if the mirrorless lenses are any less expensive. I think they're better lenses than a lot of the DSLR lenses, the F-mount lenses. Again, that's my opinion. But they're not, they are sometimes lighter, yeah, they are. But they're also made more out of plastic. Where if you take, in my recent videos, the Voigtlander lenses, they're not lighter than some of the old F-mount, but they're made out of metal and glass, and they're, not that the mirrorless lenses don't have glass in them, hello, but they're just as heavy. So don't think you're going to save a lot of weight. You don't. If you buy mirrorless camera, your existing DSLR will turn to dust. All right, enough said. Sony builds mirrorless cameras for the masses and prices them of the benefit of mankind. I'm not going to get in a fight with the Sony people. People that love Sony, When I was thinking of switching to mirrorless, I very much considered switching over to Sony. So I'm not going to bang on Sony. If Sony mirrorless cameras were better than DSLRs, they'd be more expensive. Go to economics class. Obviously, it's tongue-in-cheek. Go take an economics class and you'll know why things are priced the way they are. Sony makes Nikon's high-end sensors. Nikon is doomed. From what I understand, Sony does make a lot of the Nikon sensors. Nikon's not doomed. Matter of fact, I think they've rebounded and they're doing pretty well. Sony bodies have all the features and ergonomics that professionals demand. I'm sure there's plenty of professionals that use Sonys. I'm sure there's plenty that use Canon. I'm sure there's plenty that use Nikon. I'm sure there's plenty that use Leica, Fuji, whatever. Sony cameras are mature products and have the best documentation. I can't comment on that because I don't own Sony cameras. I think this is where he's kind of, where people are picking on this poor guy because he is taking a couple shots at Sony. I'm not going there. You know, it's like some people on Facebook and other forums, they wonder, well, why don't you talk about politics? Well, because half the people will love me and half the people will hate me, and I don't want that. Hello? So for the same reason, I'm not going to bang on Sony people, Nikon people, Canon people, Leica people, even though I do take my shots at Leica people sometimes. It's not necessarily them. I just, it's more out of jealousy. I'd love to own some of their products, but I haven't won the lottery yet. So if you can't afford to go full frame and mirrorless, you can't afford to go from good to great. There are plenty of people that do videos that take really crappy cameras out and come back with better images than people that don't know how to use their cameras and have really high-end lenses and high-end cameras. If you don't know how to use your equipment, you're not going to come away with good images. I think pretty much everyone knows that. If you don't, you should. You can get good images off just about any one of these cameras that you go and buy these days. Probably every camera that you go and buy. If you were to go buy any camera that's new these days with a decent lens, you'd be hard-pressed if you couldn't come away with good images. It's you, it's not your equipment. Mirrorless cameras have terrible battery life. There's probably some truth in that, and that it's not terrible, but they're probably not as good, at least at this point, as some of the older cameras. Mirrorless cameras do not have dual card slots, a professional deal breaker. Most mirrorless cameras now do have dual slots. Some of them don't, so you have to be aware of that, but some people don't need the dual card slots. If you're a wedding photographer, you do. If you're a professional photographer, even a landscape photographer, you probably would want one, with dual slots. So just be aware that some of them don't. The mirrorless EVS electronic viewfinder is too small and too slow to be useful. Nonsense. Sony RAW files have a lossy compressed setting that's as bad as shooting JPEG. Again, I don't shoot Sony, so I wouldn't know. I haven't really heard that, and I'm not going to bang on Sony the way he is. If image stabilization was supposed to be in the camera, God would have made VR and VC lenses for in-body stabilization. Obviously, the guy's trying to screw with people. You're going to want to take advantage of any situation you can get, and I love image stabilization, and I think just about anybody else would say that. The available mirrorless lenses barely cover the basics. Well, obviously, companies had to fill out their inventory and their range of lenses when they first came out. And Nikon was behind, admittedly so, in the mirrorless world for a lot of years, but now they're putting out a lot of really good lenses. And I know that that was one of the things that attracted people to Sony to begin with, and maybe Canon, I don't know, but probably more so Sony, in that they put out some really good lenses fairly quickly. And Nikon's been a little bit slower, but now that they've put them out, they have a wide range of lenses, and they're excellent lenses. Ansel Adams would have never used a foreign-made mirrorless camera. I actually know people that knew Ansel and worked with Ansel. And so, even though I've never met Ansel directly, I've spoken to a lot of people who really spoke with him, and I'd have to say that's probably false. Ansel would have used whatever he could have used. You can't get a shallow depth of field using a mirrorless camera. Give me a break. Of course you can. Hello, buy a decent lens. If you go mirrorless, you have to start over for your entire lens portfolio. Nonsense. And that's something that maybe people don't know. You can get adapters, and most mirrorless cameras, you can get adapters to use just about anybody else's lenses. That's one of the advantages of a mirrorless camera, in that you can get adapters and use a lot of different brands and a lot of different mounts on different mirrorless cameras. It may not be as good. For example, I had posted some questions because I really was curious. I didn't know whether on my Z8, whether it was worth putting a good Summilux or Summicron lens, getting an adapter and putting it on my Z8. And you get a wide range of opinions as to, because of the flange distance and the wider opening in the Z system, is it worth it to put one of those good Leica lenses on a Z8? And you'll get a varying degree of opinion. Some say yes, and some say no, it's not worth it. And again, that's one of the reasons why I used Voigtlander lenses, because they're very close to Leica. And I don't want to hear from the Leica people that they're not as, that the Leicas are superior. If you really get the top Leica lenses, they are. I'm not arguing that. But I will argue that for the value, the Voigtlander lenses are real close. And they're a whole lot less expensive. Sometimes as much as the Leica lenses are 10 times as much. And in most cases, they're 3 to 5 times as much. And you'll be hard pressed to find a little bit of a difference. And one of the reasons why I know that is because there's a fellow on YouTube, used to call himself Mr. Leica, I think. Matt Osborne, I think his name is. And he does use a lot of different lenses, and he compares Leica lenses to Voigtlander lenses. He's mostly a portrait photographer, and he's very fair and very honest about it. And he will tell you that there's a lot of Voigtlander lenses that are real close to his Leica lenses as far as performance and what you can get off those lenses. And sometimes he'll prefer to use a Voigtlander lens. And so that's one of the advantages of a mirrorless lens. You can adapt a lot of these different lenses to your camera. It doesn't have to be Nikon. It could be different camera manufacturers. And I don't know, from what I understand, Canon's probably one of the, I could be wrong, people could correct me, Canon's probably one of the least effective in being able to do it. They don't like sharing their mount, from what I understand. Again, I could be wrong when it comes to adapting lenses, but I know with Nikon you can do it pretty easily. Legacy lenses never perform as good when adapted to mirrorless. Manual focus lenses don't even gain autofocus. Well, they're manual focus lenses, but there are some adapters now that will take a manual focus lens and put it in, make it a autofocus lens. I haven't used the adapters. Some people speak highly of them. Some people say they're junk. I don't know. It probably depends on the manufacturer, which one you buy. But I prefer, if I'm going to buy a manual focus lens, I prefer to use it shooting at manual focus. Mirrorless cameras take better images than any level of DSLR. Again, tongue-in-cheek, everybody's opinion. You can get some really good images off a D750, a D850. From what I understand, and again, I could be corrected, I think it's the same sensor in a D7 or the D850. It's the same sensor that's in a Z7II and a Z8. I don't think they've updated it. Again, I could be wrong, but if it's the same sensor and you put the lenses on it, now the difference is that I do think some of the mirrorless lenses, especially for the Z system, comparatively so, are better than the F-mount lenses when you compare apples to apples. In other words, when you take the 20 millimeter F-mount lens and put that on a D850, and then you take the newer Z-mount lens, the S lens, 20 millimeter, both 1.8s, and you put that newer one on a Z8 or a Z7II, the newer 20 millimeter lens is the better lens. Again, night and day, black and white, no. But it's the better lens. And I think, again, when you compare, say, the 24 to 120 on the F-mount versus the 24 to 120 on the Z system, the newer 24 to 120 is the better lens. Substantial? No, but it's the better lens. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I just wanted to go through some of these things. I hope you enjoyed my festive outfit, my Jerry Garcia tie. I have two of them. I have another one with Jerry sitting underneath a tree with a reindeer playing his guitar. Maybe before the end of the year I'll wear that one too. Who knows? Happy holidays. Have a good one. And I hope to see you soon. Take care. Thanks for watching.